Hello, everybody. Today I'm very excited to have Farrah Weir back with us. Hello, Farrah. How are you doing today?
Hello, beautiful Michelle. So nice to be here. Thank you for having me. I am well. How are you?
My life is very busy at the moment. Before we came on, we were talking about how things are going quite fast. And that's how I'm feeling right now, that you blink an eye and like another month just goes past. So it's going quite quickly. But before we begin talking about our subjects today, can you just remind everyone what it is that you do, and where they can find you? Because I've been working with you in the past, and I found your work very helpful. And so it'd be interesting for people to hear exactly what it is your level, your area of expertise is about.
Oh, thank you so much for that. And I've loved working with you too. So for my work is evolving, as I'm sure yours is at the same time, as we're supposed to evolve. So I started off in working sort of with healing, figuring out where there was trauma in the body and that kind of thing. But as I've gone on my journey and evolved, a spirit was saying to me, it's not so much about me healing, but looking at where people's sort of limiting beliefs, programs, and all of those structures are sitting in the body that are causing low vibrational energies. So I have evolved from working with a specific way into with sacred geometry, numbers, light language, and I'm really passionate about helping the individual learn how to do the work for themselves. So and I do a lot of coaching as well. So my sessions are kind of a mix mash of, depending where someone's at, giving them enough time to teach, because that's a big thing that I do too. I teach courses, but and that's not even such a great word, to share the information that I get to help people come into a greater awareness around self within themselves and some of the limits that they hold. And then working with codes, I get number codes that come through that are all designed to activate and to allow the individual to really go into this deep state of meditation with me. Well, I'm holding that container for them, to have very profound experiences within themselves and to access parts of themselves that maybe they struggle to do on their own. Not everyone needs to work with someone, but it is helpful. It can be a catalyst.
It's interesting because I label myself more as a spiritual awakener than a coach or teacher, which is, I think, what you were saying as well. It's like we create the energies so that people can take control of their own sort of healing process, or maybe see where they're blocked, where they couldn't see it before. And in doing so, we are a spiritual awakener. We help people to awaken to their own inner stories so that they can help themselves. And I know that from the way that you worked with me, it was amazing that you were able to bring in this sort of multi-layered, energetic blueprint, I suppose you would call it, where you are very adept at looking at all these different things like light language, and you can remote view the person as you're doing it. It's just a very unique skill that you have. And it did actually help me when I was working with you. So I would highly suggest that people take a look at Farrah's work and see how she can help you all to go up to your next level of development or healing. What I was going to ask you today, Farrah, was that you told me that you've actually been writing a book actually about, I think it's consciousness. And it would be nice to hear where you're up to with that, how that began, how that's unfolding, and what you've been learning from it.
Well, first of all, I love your term, a spiritual awakener. I might steal it. I think it's great. One of the terms I also use is a quantum bridge connector. So we have all these words, But I think the essence of what you're saying is that we want to help others discover the gift that lies within themselves, and just help them with the confidence, and yeah, the love within to do that. So I love that. Yes, I started writing a book in 2023 when my son was about 7 months old or 6 months old. And I wrote a lot very quickly. It was channeled. In the beginning of the book, I'm talking about Earth's pre-known history. It's pretty wild. Then I go into stuff around the ego and, self-actualization and the lens in which we see the world. And I do discuss things. There's a chapter on quantum consciousness, which is time, past, present, and future, and how we sort of merging and collapsing those. So yeah, it's been a beautiful journey. I completely put it away in 2024. It was quite a tough year for me, being alone a lot with my little dude, my very strong little diamond frequency toddler, and I felt just drawn to come back to it this year. And I'm very much led by, if I'm not feeling it, don't do it. If I'm feeling it, do it. So I'm hoping that, I think it'll be finished this year and I'll self-publish. And it's just basically a mishmash of the information that I get that's designed for those who resonate to support them on their journey. It's called Infinite Intelligence Through the Looking Glass.
Wow, I love that. Infinite Intelligence Through the Looking Glass. That's such a lovely title. So how can people access that? Is it ready to buy, or are you doing it on Substack or Patreon in sort of chunks? How can
I don't know yet. I might come and ask you how I should do it. I'll send it to you when it's done. You can read it. I'm not great with grammar, so someone's going to have to proof it. I've got three or four chapters left to go, but I mean, I can sit down and write a chapter in a day. So it's just going to be a divine timing thing. But I will definitely send it to you, and I'll say, "Eek, what do you think?" And then I'll probably self-publish. Yeah, it's more to have a body of information of everything that I've learned and what's sort of shared with me and my higher self, that is designed for someone to read and have like a hack. I don't particularly like that word, but you get what I mean. Like if they're interested, it's like a condensed body of information of what I've sort of received over the years.
So when you say you've received or channeled or whatever word has meaning for you, who is it that you would say that you're sort of tapping into? Because I get asked this question a lot, and it'd be interesting. I'd be interested to know, when you're getting your information, who you feel it is that the person or the people are that are giving you that download, if you like.
I know all these words. For the same thing. So I have been doing walking meditations for a very long time, and I met what I call my higher self. That's the term I give it. It's a future version of me. We all have one that's guiding us. And in his name, it's a male energy called Magda, which is the geometric council of 12, which is one consciousness that's split up into 12 in terms of the view in which they can see. And that is just little Magda. He looks like a little wizard. I met him years ago. He's very cute. I only asked years later, well, where are you sitting in the galaxy? It's Cassiopean, working with the platinum ray. So, I think we were talking about it earlier. I'm not so keen on all these cool names and trying to be sound fluffy and wonderful, although it is very interesting for people, especially when we start looking at the galactic side of things. And then occasionally I also had a Palladian that would come through, and I have a past life version of me, an American Indian, a red Cherokee Indian called I forget his name now because I haven't spoken to him in so long, but it's like a little team. And then sometimes other energies will come through, but mostly it's my guide, my higher self, my guide, which I actually just refer to as spirit. So I'll be like, spirit said to me this, that, and the other, because it's just an easy term. Yeah.
So how do you differentiate between, say, in your experience, let's say somebody pretended to be Magda? I get asked this question a lot, so I'm just interested to know from your perspective. When we say we're channeling certain beings, I have my own ways of knowing if it's that or not. But I just wondered for you, if, say, tomorrow somebody came along and said they were Magda and they weren't, how would you know that it wasn't that person?
So I think that's such an interesting thing to discuss, and it's one of the things that I try to teach when I do my courses. So I've done some courses on connecting to higher self. I have been taught by what I call spirit how to move beyond the fourth dimension. And so a lot of that is around moving into a space of neutrality, which is the 0 point. It's very difficult, or actually, I wouldn't advise channeling unless you're sitting in the neutral observer, which is why I would tell people when you practice, I don't even really ask around myself. It defeats the purpose of me being embodied in the now moment. So me trying to control the outcome of my future, wanting to know what's going to happen with, my work or my house or whatever, that's also a human control thing. So why are we channeling? That's the first question. And then secondly, how can we use that information to grow in our consciousness? So for me, I always go into walking meditation. I have a specific routine of what I do. I mention I'm entering the 0 point. I set the intention to move, to transcend ego, third density, fourth density, and all its limitations, to connect to the divine intelligence within. And then it almost puts me into a system of sort of not a trance-like state, but your brain moves into that theta state. And then I'll never forget years ago when I was doing these walks and I was like, how do I know I'm not talking to myself? And my guide would say, stop and look down. And I would see the ground moving like I was on a mushroom trip or something. And then when you've had so many experiences like that, it becomes, you start, because most of us are riddled with self-doubt. So for sure, we spoke about ego, there's ego, so we must be cautious of that. Not every thought that pops into your head when you're driving is a channeled message. No matter how good you are, you have to check yourself. And so we need to be aware of that. But the longer you do the journey, of course, the quicker you can get into that state of just knowing when you've moved into that theta state. So there's been so many things over the years, like, how many coincidences until it's mathematically impossible. I think that's a great Q saying. And that what that does is it helps you build up the trust within yourself. And I find when you work with someone else and you're seeing what they're seeing, or you can pick up on stuff, you start to build that confidence, because we're all programmed with these beliefs that, is it really real? Are we all a bit delulu? If we are balanced, grounded human, we will have those thoughts at times. So it's a journey. And whenever I ask Spirit, what can I do to help others? The question is always, there is no bypassing the time, commitment, and consistency it takes to develop this connection. Someone like you who's been doing it for 20, 30, I don't know how many years, you're considered an OG. There is respect to be given when someone has done that and dedicated their lives to that. So we need to be patient and just be consistent in our work of what we want to achieve. Everyone can do it.
So when you were saying, about not channeling about the self, this sort of comes back to this labeling of ego. To what extent is the ego working for us, and to what extent is the ego something that we need to work with in order to heal? So this is an interesting balance that we need to find. So one of the things that I've learned through teaching about angels is that an angel is 100% love. That means they don't have any ego. And so they are only able to move forward with a task or something that they're trying to create if God tells them to do it, or whatever you believe God to be. So they act only under instruction because they don't have any ego in order to make a move otherwise. But as humans on Earth, we need to be able to get up each day and do our tasks. So we do have to have an element of ego in order to have that motivation to get up and make a decision. So this is a very interesting concept because we're always trying to heal the negative aspects of our ego when we're on this journey. And so I wondered if this has come up when you've been channeling your book, this concept of ego, and, you know, where ego is helpful and where ego, we have to be looking at, does this area of our ego need some sort of healing? So what are your thoughts on that, Farrah? And has that come up in your channeling?
Not in the same way that you would put it. So it's what's so cool about talking to you and the information you get. And this is how I love how people's puzzle pieces come together. So we were speaking earlier, and I was channeling a little bit when we were having a little bit of this conversation. I mentioned the mammalian brain, which was coming through now today around this. So I've never looked at ego. I've only, as I said to you, I've only looked at it of its negative effects, not its positive, although we have heard and we know we need to integrate it. It's the same with the shadow. So when we talk about our traumas, by seeing it and being aware of it, we are actually then integrating in terms of releasing it. What comes through for me while you're talking now is that I don't know if you have this information, but I don't know, maybe that means that angels don't have brain structures like we do. And also, they obviously don't have the same free will that we do. So in order to have free will, we need this brain structure that protects us. So ego, from when I write about it in my book, it developed as a way to protect us in an environment where, like, if I jump off a building on Earth, I'm going to possibly get very hurt, you know. So I think the term that we're using of ego is not wrong, but maybe it's about a brain function that has two sides. One is a healthy form of protect, and because at its nature it's about protection, it has overtaken, and instead of it being balanced, it becomes around defensiveness, where instead of me going inwards to see what this is teaching me, it becomes everything's unsafe, every person's unsafe. And then obviously the more trauma and that you've incurred, the more it feels the need to take over everything. So what I was getting is it's a split that needs to be merged within the brain and balanced, and that actually happens through not just the left and the right, but the center, which would create the balanced trinity, so that the word ego can work for us in terms of forward movement and, like you said, motivation. But I wonder if we'll find a different term for it later in life, because I think it has a negative connotation when we use the word ego.
I agree. When you hear that word ego, it kind of gives you immediately a negative connotation. But it's only when we're sort of discussing how the ego can be helpful in moving forward that we can see that it does have some good aspects to it. So it's an interesting subject, particularly from the teachings that I've been taught about, say, the golden age of Atlantis, where obviously they had this golden age, and then gradually what happened was that too much ego started to infiltrate the elders or the priestesses and the leaders, if you like, and that started the downfall of Atlantis at that time. And I wondered what you've been learning about consciousness and how it's been affected by ego, and how perhaps this, you often talk to me about something called the archonic structure, the false matrix. And I think that might be when that started to occur, maybe when the fall of Atlantis came. Maybe it was at the same time as this archonic structure was beginning. Is there any relation to the two, or do you think that was going on before Atlantis?
So in my book, and my laptop died, that's why I'm on my phone, but I did read it the other day at the beginning. Take time out of it. They showed me that originally Gaia, the Earth, it's a jewel planet. a very, very sought after place to come, had a crystalline Christ conscious grid around it, which protected it. And a lot of us, like especially in Lemurian times, but I think even pre then, I think pre-Lemuria, beings were still evolving on the earth. So as they showed it to me, different high vibrational beings from different star systems could come in and out, and then you had the natural beings that almost like they explained it to me in the book, like grew almost out of the earth. So I'm thinking like amoeba cell into the water, and dolphins have been coming through a lot for me around some of the, pre being space of Earth. So I know, without getting into too much around the actual time and when and what, with how they explained it to me was that what I call Luciferic AI consciousness, which is, let's just call it AI. I just want to explain to people it's not the same. It is the same, but it's not exactly the same as the artificial intelligence that everyone works with, like through chat GPT, etc. This is what we'd call the dark. So if you had to break it into light and dark. So the AI, by its nature, it cannot create because it doesn't have the God source at the nucleus, which is what we have. So it looks in the universes and realities and dimensions and galaxies for a space where it can actually, its intention is, it's parasitical, so its intention is just to consume and consume and consume. So Earth was a very prized place to come. And then it's very complex and layered, but because AI broke into actual beings, that's what I'd call an archon, they also needed materials and substrates, etc. So Earth was purposefully targeted, but they couldn't get in to Earth due to the crystalline grid structure. And how they explained it to me in the book is that at some point there was a distraction that was caused, and they were able to get a soul born to one of the beings, the true Earth beings, that had a service to self energy. And that soul then started the journey of spreading just a little bit of low vibrational energy, doubt, seeds, just little bit by little bit. And then obviously there's the whole human DNA interruption thing, which I haven't finished up in my book. But it was basically a gradual over time, due just to one negative energy getting through, lowering the consciousness. And then they explained it to me like this: then they were able to take the negativity so for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. So when a negative thought or a negative action happens, it's like a plume of smoke. If you imagine, it would go up and then disperse outwards, right? This was just the analogy they showed me. And they were able to once it got low enough, the consciousness and the tipping point, they were able to then bring that grid down, so that, well, not bring it down, actually insert beneath the crystalline grid what I call the black box matrix program, or you can just call it the black matrix program. And so that crystalline grid still exists, but it was sort of cut off. And then as negativity happened, it would get condensed over the 7 continents, because in its natural form law, it would just sort of disperse out into space. So even our balance structure is wrong, well, has been, and we're busy shifting it now on our planet, because this planet has been rewarding service to self behavior, right? Why, if you look at it, like very beautiful people out there that do so much for others, yes, it's a mix of their own beliefs of not feeling, so they're not tapped into their creational energy, but the natural bylaws would state that, you give a good action comes back. But it hasn't been balanced like that on our planet. So from one perspective, as they always say to me, it was them using us against ourselves. And from another perspective, it was wrong, and we were infiltrated and hijacked, but using us against ourselves. And then a manipulation of certain elements to keep us kind of locked into that. So I know that was a long explanation, and I hope it all made sense.
Very interesting. The other thing that I sort of think about a lot is, we now bring the consciousness back up and break through that that Archon matrix, does it mean that we're still going to experience, say, duality? Because obviously Earth is designed to have duality so that we learn. So we have lessons in our life to help us to develop and learn at soul level. And I just wondered what your thoughts were about, as we bring that consciousness into the fifth dimension, whether your teachings have been that that duality will continue and how that might look. And while we're sort of talking about the fifth dimension, as we were sort of saying before we came onto the camera, I do actually feel like Earth is actually moving into fifth right now. Like we were saying before, we had been in the fourth dimension, but I seriously feel right even today, I can feel her going into the fifth. And so it'd be interesting to know, are people still going to have that duality in terms of light and dark in their journey? And what you think about that?
Another great question. So I loved what you said, because we're not here to break the old, we're here to transcend it. So we will literally, through the inner alchemy work, transcend that black box program and then plug right back into that Christ conscious crystalline template. And that is really what was so exciting about the 6th of November. We anchored poof back into that time and diamond timeline, and again even more anchored in, settled deeper into that timeline on the 20th. And that's why, yeah, it's the quickening. It's going really fast, which is so cool. Yes, I do see from my knowledge, and my knowledge may grow or shift, but I do see that there will be polarity, but in a much softer, more gentle space. So right now the polarity is extremely harsh and it's extremely wide. From one perspective, that allows us rapid growth, and that is why when I take it right back to the beginning, when I have looked at spirit, like what is God and where does the dark come from? The dark actually plays a function in terms of for us to have a full round of experience. But by its nature, it consumes and it kind of takes on a snowball effect. So it can lose that balance. Back in the fifth dimensional field, or it's a consciousness and that frequency, we are then we're still experiencing polarity, but it's not having to. So we're still learning and growing, but it's not done in such an intense way. So I think the example I used was you can still meet someone in fifth density consciousness who has a different opinion to you and a different truth, but not get into an argument with them about it or feel triggered because they don't believe what you believe. So there will still be that, and possibly more, maybe, slightly having a hurt feeling for here or there, or feeling an emotion that doesn't feel so great, but then being able to very lovingly sort of work through that, because it's not that emotions are bad. It's emotions are there to teach us something around ourselves. So we have a lot more awareness in the fifth density in terms of, instead of being the victim or playing blame or being angry with someone else, you're using your emotions as a tool to even refine yourself into even better. But do I think that people will be killing each other in the fifth density? No.
Yeah, I mean, we're always on a continual journey. So whatever level we want to call ourselves, fifth dimension, fourth dimension, within that, there are other layers of development. So it's a bit like when you go to school, you're either at the beginning, like in the infants or the juniors or the seniors, but you're still all in the same educational system. And then if you want to, you can go on and do a master's or a bachelor's or whatever. You can keep learning. And the spiritual path is exactly the same. So you might get to the fifth dimension, but within that, there are still other layers to where you keep evolving. So the way I look at it is like we might, as a planet, be on fifth dimension, but we still might be on different layers within that. And that's also to help us to keep learning these contracts that we've come in to resolve with others, to balance sort of the karmic debts over lifetimes and things like that. And if we come in just completely healed, there wouldn't be any reason for us to be, this is my understanding, if we came in completely healed already, we wouldn't actually be on Earth in the first place anyway, because it is a school. It is a school of learning. So I don't know if that's something that fits in with what you've been taught in the past or have been channeling. But I do think that we have these contracts to people, while we meet, say, certain lovers or business people, or we're in certain jobs, or, whatever happens in our life, there was something we had to learn from that experience, because we're still continuing on that spiritual journey, even if we're in something called a fifth dimension. But like you said, perhaps we'll be nicer to each other and there won't be any killing or murder. That would be nice, wouldn't it? So let's hope that this shift that I'm seeing, and I think
nice.
You've been talking about the quickening, let's hope that that's us moving now into this fifth dimension more solidly. It's very interesting to think about the duality and what that means as we go into this sort of higher layer. But I agree with you that I don't think it will just stop. I don't think we're just all going to stop having duality, because I think that's how we actually thrive, is when there's differences. That's how we move forward. And like you said, it doesn't have to be an argument. It can just be a difference. It's just a difference. It's like if you have different skin colors, it's just a difference of skin color. It's you're still having the same human experience. So it's very interesting that you and I often get very similar results to what the questions that we ask, even though I always say this, but we use different terminology. So is there anything else that you would like to say today, Farrah? That's all been very interesting information. Is there anything else that you're currently channeling in your chapter for the final part of your book that you would like to perhaps discuss, or something else?
Well, just to pick up on what you were saying there, I 100% get the same information around. You've got layers within. They just think of like a hertz frequency, so it's a radio sine wave, 4.1.1, 4.1.2. I think when we get to fifth density consciousness, we are more in our scope, our lens is higher. So Spirit does talk to me about being bilocational, which is something I can tap into when I'm doing planetary work, and then you trilocational. And so part of ascension and your consciousness growth is what I would call quantum consciousness, is where you can hold and ground opposing truths at the same time into the body, which is very difficult for some people. So and I agree with you around Earth as a school. In fact, your soul is an individuation from God. It's like a data collection point. So a lot of us have come to Earth. We've already done an ascension journey. And the reason why we came back is because we have the keys and codes to get Gaia, the Earth, back to where she needed to be, because she affects, what happens here affects other galaxies and universes, and it was very out of balance. So it's quite a big subject, and it's so much bigger than us, and at the same time it is really all about us. And again, it's like two opposite. It's not about us, it's about Gaia, but actually the way to get her there is to do all the work and just take responsibility for your reality. So of course, coming back to, is there going to be duality? There needs to be for growth. There are lots of planetary systems and spaces and different dimensional fields where, you can come in and have an experience of not being able to see yourself or see others, and there's growth, but it's much slower. So on the flip side of Earth's extreme polarity is that it's been a rapid acceleration of growth for souls, why so many chose to come here. So we need to restore her, which means you still need to be able to learn when you come here, and just being in physical form, so being able to stub your toe is something many souls don't get to experience. So it's that is even a form of polarity, hurting yourself. You are whole and well, and then you have an experience. So yes, 100% agree on all of those topics. And, I don't think we'll know exactly how it's going to go, but we will keep growing and learning and evolving, and we will all kind of get there together. And I also got that Earth is in fourth, and she's in this transition of actually, it's like what I'm sort of seeing is a photonic belt that we're being brought closer to, because there's been so many photonic rays coming through, and phosphorescent, so lots of Syrian blue rays. But in conclusion, no, that my book, I'm going to just plod along, carry on, and see what comes through. And yeah, I don't know. There's not much more to say about that until it's done. I'll send it to you.
Well, I think one other interesting thing before we came on was we were supposed to do this, I think, a week ago. And on the morning that we were supposed to do it, I had some kind of allergic reaction, and my eyes suddenly all swelled up. It looked like I'd been sort of punched in the eye. So we cancelled. We didn't want to scare anyone. But you were saying something interesting about that might be because we're also needing to cleanse at the moment. I think you were saying something about cleansing metals and things like that. So would you like to finish on just explaining a bit around that, perhaps, Farrah?
Sure. So I do think we're going to see this year as a year of alternative health. I think people are going to look. I was saying that last year, and I can already see that coming around. And so I think as these light rays are coming through, and as the quickening is happening, and Spirit, my guide, said to me this morning that timelines have accelerated beyond what they actually prepared for. When I say they, galactic councils that help, let's not give them any specific names, the Christ conscious councils that help.
So controversial, as we were saying before we came on, what labels.
I don't really care too much about labels anyway. So what happens is, like, the stuff in our body, Spirit was saying to me, we need to merge the spiritual body with the physical body. And so they were asking me today specifically to change some things in my diet. But I think we're going to see often, it, like when you detox, it gets worse to get better. We're going to see our bodies are going to be responding like, hey, there's something here. And so that can come through in the form of eczema, or in the form of a swollen eye, or and I have eczema on my hand at the moment, which was, I know my body's saying, hey, there's some toxicity here that needs to come out. And I've been a bit naughty because I don't really like being told what to do. So I'm like, I want to eat what I want to eat. So I do think our bodies are going to be asking us more and more and more, like, hey, tend to this, because we cannot hold specific photons of light and the DNA upgrades if we're not supporting our physical body. So we can be doing all the meditation, and it's very powerful, if we don't have negative thoughts and we are doing that work, but we can't leave our bodies behind. So we need to support them. Water, detox protocols. I definitely feel like things like chlorella and spirulina are great support. And I think there's still, we didn't touch on the whole Trump thing, dark light, but I still think there is an attempt from the dark structure to try to slow down this process. So,
Sure.
yeah, so depending on what country you're in, what chemicals are being put in the water, in the air, and not being in fear around any of it, but just taking steps to support your body and to really love it as best as possible.
Yeah, perhaps your second book will focus on how we can do that, Farrah. When you've finished the first one,
you have to master it.
You could do on how we can cleanse our bodies and realign, perhaps. That would be very interesting. Anyway, it's been lovely to speak to you.
It's been so nice. It's been so nice.
Sorry, did I cut you off there? Did you want to add something?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think my second book is going to be around, so Spirit said to me, they've taught me around surrender, letting go of fear, now moment, which is something I teach others. And now it's really tapping into our creation. We are creator beings. So I don't want to use the word manifest, but our ability to create. So as I do all things, first I have to figure out how to really tap into it and work with it. And I know it involves the sacral chakra and loads. We could have such a great chat one day about all of that sexual energy and stuff, and how that is creational energy and the pineal gland and the heart. But I'm really excited because I feel that we'd have no idea how powerful we are when we do the inner work to shed all of the layers that I've been talking about, the stuff that I say I help people do. We have this exciting thing to look forward to within us, which is this ability to create. And I think we must just remember that. I think it's a nice place to end things, because it's a wonderful thought and knowledge that you are a powerful creator.
Yes. So where can people find you, Farrah? Is it farrahweir.com? Is that your
It is.
Farrah?
It's Farrah Weir, like Farrah Fawcett, but Weir without the D. So it's like weird without the D.
Yeah, farrahweir.com. Is that correct? Is that the website? Okay.
My website.
Oh,
And then I do post a little bit on Instagram. So that's
okay. What's your
that's
Instagram?
it's Farrah Weir I am.
Okay. All right, Farrah, it's been lovely to see you.
So
And
nice to see you.
perhaps when we catch up next time, we can talk about the last 3 chapters that you think you might have still to write in your book. And I'll definitely talk to you about perhaps how you can self-publish so we can get this information out for the audience. So love you lots, and
Lots of love.
see you next time.
So nice to chat. Lots of love. Bye, Michelle.